Imagine you are paying someone a pretty massive fee to just physically cut you open with a knife.
Which sounds completely insane right out of the gate.
Right. I mean, it sounds like an actual crime, but if that person happens to be a surgeon, well, we don't call it a felony, we call it a miracle.
Yeah, the context completely shifts how we view the exact same physical act.
Exactly. So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are taking that exact paradox, how a specific action can be a crime in one context and a total lifesaver in another, and applying it to this massive divine mystery.
It's such a fascinating puzzle.
It really is.
Yeah.
We're unpacking this incredible audio lecture today that basically asks one central question. Like, why is Krishna, who is obviously one of history's most revered divine figures, actually celebrated for being a thief?
Right, because normally, if you look at any ancient text or religious framework, theft is universally condemned. It's just bad.
Always. But here, stealing butter is affectionately called a leela, which translates to a divine play. So our mission today is to kind of look past that literal story of a mischievous kid stealing dairy, right?
Exactly, and uncover what is essentially a masterclass in human psychology. Because this material really challenges how we define right and wrong.
Yeah, it maps out how we process our own emotional baggage. So let's start right at the foundation. To figure out why a divine figure can also be a thief, we have to completely tear down our basic definition of what a sin actually is.
Which is uncomfortable for a lot of people to do.
Oh, totally. Because the baseline definition most of us operate on is pretty simple. A sin is any action that is morally wrong.
Right. The action itself is the problem.
Right. And to test that, the lecture brings up that concept of physical violence. Like if
Right.
you were sitting on a jury and you saw someone intentionally cut another human being's body, you would immediately vote guilty.
Viscerally, yes. I
Yep.
mean, causing bodily harm is universally recognized as morally wrong. It crosses every cultural boundary we have.
Okay, let's unpack this because this is where the surgeon analogy comes in and just completely shatters that binary way of thinking.
But breaks it right open.
Because the physical action, taking a sharp blade and literally slicing into a human body, it is mathematically, physically identical in both scenarios.
The exact same motion.
Yeah. So if the action itself is the sin, well, the surgeon should be in prison right now.
But think about what is actually happening there. The invisible intention is what completely flips the morality of the physical act.
The invisible intention, yeah.
Right, because the surgeon's intention is to preserve life. They want to heal. So the meaning of an action doesn't actually live in the physical movement of the hands.
It lives in the consciousness behind those hands.
Exactly. It depends entirely on the purpose, the timing, and, well, the situation.
So this brings up a massive distinction from the audio clip, and I really want to spend some time here. Because there is this argument that morality and dharma are fundamentally different things.
Which is a huge shift in perspective.
It is. I think in casual, everyday conversation, we just use those words interchangeably. Like, we assume being a moral person means you are, following your dharma.
Most people do, yeah.
But if they aren't the same, what is the actual difference?
Well, it's the crux of this entire philosophy. So, morality, as defined in this specific framework, is strictly superficial.
Superficial how?
It's like the security camera footage of your life. It only asks the literal question, what did you do?
Oh, wow. The security camera footage. I like that.
Right. It just sees that you took something that wasn't yours, or you told a lie, or you cut a body. Morality just looks at that surface event and judges it against a really rigid set of societal rules.
So it's binary, black and white.
Very black and white. But Dharma goes so much deeper. Dharma isn't really concerned with the what. It asks, why did you do it?
The intention again.
Yes. In service of what higher truth was this action performed? Because Dharma is about the ultimate alignment of an action with universal harmony.
Okay, but hold on. Let me just push back on that for a second.
Go for it.
Because if dharma is just about, doing things for a higher truth, isn't that a wildly slippery slope?
Oh, it absolutely can be.
Right. Like, it sounds like a blank check for anyone to justify terrible behavior. A dictator could just say, well, sure, I broke the moral rules, but my intention was to create a stronger nation, so it's my dharma.
That is the ultimate trap, and it is a fantastic point to bring up.
Like, how do we know someone isn't just making elaborate excuses for doing whatever they want?
The key difference, and the material is really clear about this, between a tyrant's excuse and actual dharma is the complete absence of personal ego.
Ego. Okay.
Yeah, for an action to be truly dharmic, it cannot be driven by selfish desire or personal gain or hatred.
Which a dictator obviously has.
Exactly. A dictator is driven by a hunger for power. But the surgeon, to go back to our analogy, they aren't cutting the patient open because they, enjoy
What?
violent.
Rebirth them, yeah.
Right. They are fulfilling a duty to save a life. So Dharma requires this level of absolute, basically ruthless self-honesty about your own motivation.
So if there's even a drop of selfishness.
If there is even a drop of selfish ego in the why, it immediately ceases to be Dharma. It just becomes a justified sin.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. The ego is the dividing line there, which frankly perfectly sets up the massive paradox we see in the epic of the Mahabharata.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if we judge the characters strictly by literal morality, that security camera footage you mentioned, Krishna would probably have the longest rap sheet in ancient history.
Oh, it wouldn't even be close.
Well,
If you view Krishna's actions through that rigid moral lens, he just looks like a master manipulator.
right. I mean, let's look at the actual events from the source. He actively pushes Arjuna to fight this devastating war against his own family members.
Which is horrifying on a moral level.
Exactly. And then he forces Yudhishthira, who is this character whose entire identity is built on absolute unshakable truthfulness. He forces him to tell a strategic lie on the battlefield just to demoralize an enemy commander.
And he repeatedly finds loopholes in the established rules of engagement.
Yeah, so if you stop at morality, he is guilty on all counts.
Totally. But when you apply the lens of Dharma, that picture completely changes.
Because of the ego thing.
Right. Krishna is operating without any personal ambition. He isn't trying to conquer a kingdom for himself.
Right, he's basically trying to steer the entire universe back toward justice.
Yes, to prevent a tyrannical regime from just destroying the world. So sometimes, preserving that ultimate truth requires breaking the literal rules of morality.
So making Yudhishthira lie.
It was a massive moral crisis for the characters, sure. But dharmically, it was the only way to disarm a warrior who was actively destroying thousands of innocent lives.
Okay, I can wrap my head around that.
Yeah.
I think most people listening can understand the concept of a tragic necessity.
It's the greater good argument, essentially.
Right. Lying to win a war against tyranny, sure, that is dharma. Breaking a rule to save a life, absolutely. But how on earth does that justify stealing a snack?
It's a very jarring pivot, isn't it?
Yeah, we go from the fate of the universe to, like, a literal kitchen heist.
Exactly.
And the lecture highlights this brilliantly. Stealing a pot of butter doesn't save the world.
No, it doesn't.
Like, if a normal kid goes into a neighbor's house and steals their food just because he has a sweet tooth, we don't call that a divine play. We call his parents and suggest behavioral therapy.
Yeah, we punish them.
Because there is no grand, world-saving why behind petty theft.
Which means, logically, we have been approaching the whole mystery from the wrong angle.
Okay, so how should we look at it?
Well, if the why doesn't justify the action in this specific case, we have to look much closer at the action itself.
And here's where it gets really interesting. This is where the audio lecture takes this hard left turn that I found completely fascinating.
It's a brilliant reframing.
Yeah. We have to stop asking why he stole and start looking really intensely at what he chose to steal.
The specific item is the key to the entire metaphor.
Right. Why butter?
It is a very specific choice.
Yeah.
Especially when you look at the agricultural setting of these stories. I mean, there was a massive abundance of valuable things to take.
Right. Like, why not just drink the milk? Or why not eat the curd?
Or dry fruits or sweets.
Yeah, why not grab a handful of dry fruits, miawa or traditional sweets? Or, honestly, if you want something truly valuable, why not steal ghee?
Clarified butter.
Right, which is considered the most pure and precious offering in that culture. Why go through the very messy, highly specific effort of stealing freshly churned, raw butter?
To crack this open, we basically have to step into the kitchen.
Let's do it.
So the speaker in the material deconstructs the literal culinary process of making butter, which is called makan.
Right.
And it turns out the literal recipe for butter maps flawlessly onto the blueprint for human psychological and spiritual evolution.
So let's walk through that recipe, because you don't just, tap a cow and get butter.
I know, it takes work.
A lot of work. You have to start with milk. Then you introduce a culture to that milk and let it ferment until it turns into curd or yogurt.
But you still don't have butter at that point.
Exactly. You have to take that heavy curd and aggressively, almost violently churn it.
Mathna, as it's called.
Right, mathna. You beat it and spin it for a long time until eventually the physical state actually changes. The solid butter separates from the liquid buttermilk and it floats to the top.
So that is the literal culinary process.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we translate that into the inner workings of a human being?
You know what that process immediately reminds me of?
What's that?
It is exactly like dealing with raw data.
Oh, that's an interesting comparison.
Like, think about your own job, or honestly, anytime you've had to make a big decision. You start with millions of unorganized spreadsheets and metrics.
Just a wall of numbers.
Exactly. That raw data is the milk. It has a ton of potential, but it is completely useless in that raw state.
Mm.
You can't make a strategic decision just staring at raw data.
Right, you have to organize it.
So you process it, you categorize it, you turn it into the curd, but it is still just a heavy block of information.
It hasn't yielded anything yet.
Right. To get any actual value out of it, you have to vigorously analyze it. You run algorithms, you stress test the models, you debate the findings.
You're churning the data.
Exactly. You churn that data until finally you extract this one pure golden nugget of actionable insight. And that insight is the butter.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it.
Yeah.
Data extraction is essentially a perfect modern parallel for spiritual extraction.
So how does the source map out the spiritual side?
Let's map those exact spiritual equivalents laid out in our source material.
Yep.
So in this philosophical framework, the milk represents raw, unconditioned human potential.
Okay, so that's us at the very beginning.
Yes, it is the endless possibility we're born with before we truly start colliding with the world.
The unorganized data.
Exactly. But we don't stay in that state. We live, we interact with people, and that milk ferments into curd.
Okay, so what is the curd then?
The curd represents the accumulation of all our life experiences. It is our memories, our successes, our deep traumas, our learned biases, our heartbreaks.
Just everything we absorb simply by existing.
Yes, and the lecture points out a really important danger here. If you just let curd sit there, it eventually goes sour.
It spoils, yeah.
It does. And psychologically, if we just let our traumas and biases sit completely unexamined in our minds, they go sour too.
Wow. They turn into resentment.
Exactly. They become this heavy, dense mass of conditioning that dictates all our reactions. We become defensive, anxious, and just deeply attached to our own egos.
So we are basically just walking around carrying heavy buckets of sour curds.
Unfortunately, a lot of us are.
So how do we keep it from going sour? We have to churn it.
This is the most vital step in the whole metaphor. The churning process, the mothna, is deep, rigorous self-reflection. It is the spiritual practice, or sadhana.
Sadhana, right.
It is the active and honestly often incredibly painful process of questioning your own life experiences.
But what does that actually look like in practice, though? Like, practically speaking, how are you churning your own mind?
It looks like brutal self-honesty. It could look like meditation or intense journaling or even dump therapy.
Oh, right. Digging into the hard stuff.
Yet it is the exact moment you stop blaming the outside world and start asking yourself the hard questions like, why did I react to that criticism with so much anger?
Or like, what old insecurity is driving my behavior right now?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Am I actually acting out of love right now or just a need for control? When you actually sit down and aggressively question a painful memory, the curd, you stop being the victim of it.
You become an observer.
Yes. You are vigorously churning your own accumulated baggage.
And that completely explains the physics of the butter.
How so?
Because the lecture emphasizes this specific physical property. When you churn the curd, the butter separates and it becomes incredibly light.
Yes, the lightness is key.
Because it is so light, it physically floats to the very top of the liquid.
And that psychological distance we just talked about, the act of observing your own trauma instead of, drowning in it, is exactly what lightens the ego.
Oh, wow.
Through that rigorous churning, a person's heart is literally lightened of the heavy, dense burden of their conditioning.
They separate their true, authentic self from the mess of their worldly experiences.
Right. It is the ultimate state of detachment.
So you are still in the liquid? Like, you still live in the chaotic world, you still have a job and relationships, but you aren't dissolving into the chaos anymore.
Exactly. You aren't defined by it.
Your ego has become so incredibly light that you just naturally remain elevated. You float.
You are deeply engaged with the world, but your internal state remains completely untouched by it.
Man, that is so cool. So we have finally decoded what the butter actually is. We aren't talking about a dairy product anymore at all.
Not even a little bit.
We're talking about a highly evolved state of being, and the speaker provides this really beautiful modern translation for it.
What do they call it?
They said the butter represents your higher self operating at its highest possible frequency, and that frequency is love.
Absolute, unadulterated love, purity, and compassion.
Yeah.
When the heavy, fearful ego is churned away, what naturally rises to the top is just pure love.
Which brings us right back to our original mystery and completely resolves the paradox.
Right, the stealing.
Yes. This explains exactly why Krishna steals the butter, and it tells us what the divine actually desires from us.
Because the material points out a really fascinating distinction about Krishna compared to how we usually view God, doesn't it?
It does, because often religious frameworks really emphasize the struggle, the penance, the fasting, the decades of rigorous
That's
meditation.
the suffering, almost.
Yeah, but this lecture highlights that Krishna doesn't actually care about the mechanics of your struggle.
He doesn't want the intense penance.
No, he doesn't even want the churning process itself. The churning is just the tool. Krishna is only hungry for one thing: pure emotion.
Pure love.
Exactly. The term used is pav. He's not grading you on how hard you spun the churning stick. He just wants the butter that comes from it.
In the broader context of this philosophy, the path to connection with the divine is purely the path of devotion, or bhakti.
Bhakti, right.
And love isn't just a fleeting emotion here, it is the absolute climax, the absolute peak of human spiritual evolution.
It took me a second to really wrap my head around this next point, but when it clicked, it completely changed how I look at self-improvement entirely.
What was that?
The material emphasizes that the churning process, like all that therapy, all that meditation we talked about, it does not create the butter.
Ah, yes.
Yes.
It only uncovers it.
Think about the weight of that, the pure love, that absolute compassion. It isn't something you have to manufacture out of thin air.
No, it's innate.
It is already inside every single person listening to this right now. The butter was always in the milk from the very beginning.
You didn't add it from the outside.
Exactly. You just had to strip away everything that wasn't butter.
It is a profoundly empowering shift in perspective
Mm-hmm.
because so much of modern self-help is based on acquisition.
So 100% buy this, learn this, add this.
Right. You need to acquire better habits, acquire more peace, acquire a higher frequency from some external source.
Like it's something you have to go out and buy.
Exactly. But this philosophy says, no, you already possess the absolute highest frequency of love. It is simply buried under heavy layers of ego, lust, and societal conditioning.
So your only job is to just stop adding to the curd.
Yes, stop adding to the mess and start churning what is already there so you can let the love float to the surface.
And that brings this entire journey to its actual climax. Because when we look at the image of Krishna sneaking into a house to steal butter, we are not looking at a child committing a literal petty crime.
No, not at all. We are looking at a profound psychological roadmap.
He is stealing a human heart that is completely overflowing with pure, egoless love.
He sees that you have done the incredibly hard work.
Right. You didn't just let your life experiences go sour. You actively churned your pain. You examined your biases. You lightened your ego. And your pure love finally floated up to the surface.
And the divine is so drawn to that pure frequency, that pav, that it simply has to come and claim it.
It literally can't resist it.
Exactly. And that is exactly why, as the lecture notes, Krishna is famously and affectionately known by the title Chitkor.
The stealer of hearts.
The stealer hearts, yeah.
I mean, it completely reframes the entire narrative. What started as this, confusing question about why society would glorify a thief ends up being this incredibly sophisticated framework for how to process human trauma and find our most authentic selves.
It really requires us to constantly challenge our own superficial thinking.
It does. We started by looking at morality, right? The rigid, literal what of an action, like a surgeon's knife or a stolen pot of butter.
But by applying the deeper lens of Dharma, the why, the intention, the egoless alignment, we were able to crack open a childhood tale and find a psychological masterclass.
We went from a literal crime to the metaphorical extraction of pure love.
And it all hinges on recognizing that these ancient texts, and frankly our own lives, they are constantly asking us to look past the surface.
To not just accept the immediate superficial reading of any situation.
Right. It demands a state of active, critical engagement with our own minds. Like, are we just passively reacting to the curd of our life experiences?
Just letting it sit there.
Exactly. Are we letting our memories and traumas just ferment until they turn into bitter, sour resentment? Or are we going to actually do the hard, vigorous work of churning them to find the wisdom hidden inside?
Wow. So as we wrap up today's deep dive, I really want to leave you with a final thought to ponder, building right off that incredible metaphor.
It's a powerful one.
It really is. We've established that the butter isn't created, right? It's revealed. That highest frequency of love and clarity is already sitting inside you. just waiting for the heavy layers of ego and conditioning to be stripped away.
It's already there.
So look at your own life right now. What specific hurt are you letting go sour? What painful memory, what stubborn bias, or what daily frustration are you just carrying around like dead weight?
We all have them.
We really do. If the churning process is what reveals the pure butter hidden beneath all that, what specific churning do you need to practice today?
What are you avoiding?
Exactly. What moments of quiet, uncomfortable, vigorous self-reflection are you actively avoiding? Because that uncomfortable reflection might be exactly what you need to finally let your own higher self float to the surface.
Beautifully said.
So think about it. Do the work to churn the data of your life. Because once that pure butter rises, you never know who might come along to steal your heart.